It's Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Big Apple Blitz here on a loser Monday for both the Jets and the Giants. Matt O'Leary with Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, how are you doing, my friend?
You know, you say it's a loser Monday, and that it technically is, but for the New York Giants, I think we're at the point where losses are wins, so maybe perhaps victory Monday on the Giants end of things, but definitely not a victory Monday on the Jets side of things. Feels like the hope for the playoffs and for the immaculate cayenne pepper juiced playoff run seems like the hope is dead.
It's over. It is completely over after an embarrassing 31-6 effort on the road in Arizona. Now, I didn't love the matchup for the Jets going up against Arizona with how well, they ran the ball this year. I was not anticipating this kind of no-show. Right from the opening possession, the Cardinals went down the field and scored in like 5 plays. And they had a huge screen pass that went right down to the 1 yard line. And it's like the defense just did not care. The tackling effort has been abysmal all season. Their effort in the run game is horrible. And like, I'm left almost speechless in a way. When you think it can't get any worse, they go out and just give a complete no-show performance. And like, who do you blame at this point? Is this the general manager? Is this the head coach? Is this the players? Who do we get on and rip today is my question.
I mean, where do you start and where do you end? Because I think there's a lot of people that you can place blame on. I think a lot of it does fall on the quarterback's shoulders. I think Aaron Rodgers throwing for 151 yards versus a Cardinals defense that has been vulnerable is pretty unacceptable. But then again, Breece Hall hasn't rushed for 100 yards in 4 straight weeks, so he's part of the problem as well. They only gave 7 carries, producing 27 yards to Braylon Allen. As you see right there, the offense is literally just inept. There's nothing taking place on the offensive side of the ball that inspires you any kind of confidence in this team. And defensively, letting up 31 to the Cardinals is a pretty terrible look as well. So both sides of the ball is a struggle. Obviously, you could blame a lot of it on coaching. Nathaniel Hackett's offense has always been a broken machine, still is. But Jeff Ulbrich stepping into that head coaching job, I wonder if that's had an effect on his ability as a defensive coordinator as well, because the defense has been shaky throughout the past few weeks. So I really think top to bottom coaching staff needs a clean slate. And obviously, considering the underperformance of a lot of the players as well, perhaps in the offseason, you're taking a long look at Joe Douglas. But right now, it just feels like the Jets are heading towards a total rebuild.
It does feel that way. I don't know how you go about fixing this other than just tearing it down. I don't think it's worthwhile to bring Aaron Rodgers back for next year and try to make another run at this with just how poor it's gone. It's not all on Rodgers, but he looks at times disinterested. It's like these 5-yard out routes and there's no shots down the field. He can't move anymore. He's not on the same page with any of these receivers. And eventually, like, are you better off just running with Tyrod Taylor and maybe drafting a quarterback and just take your lumps with the dead cap hit in 2025 and try to move this thing in another direction? Because I don't know what kind of GM or head coaching candidate you're going to get in here if you're hamstringing them by saying that, they have to take on Aaron Rodgers at 41 years old. And again, like, that's not giving a pass to the defense, which just a mix of, the general manager dismantling the defensive line, but also at the same time, the people who are here are not putting up an effort. I don't know if you saw the Sauce Gardner missed tackle on Trey McBride, but he's getting absolutely torched for that. for the tackling effort. It was on third down, could have got them off the field, and McBride basically took him for a ride for 17 yards. It's just embarrassing.
I mean, tackling's been an issue for him all season long. Effort, arguably, has also been an issue. And I think you make a really good point. How, as an ownership or as a front office, can you push Aaron Rodgers onto another regime? How do you even make that happen? Yeah, I mean, listen, Trey McBride is sick, awesome athlete, really great up and coming tight end, but that is just inexcusable.
It's
Like, that's not how
embarrassing.
you tackle at the NFL level if you're Sauce Gardner. I mean, perhaps you could make an argument that the banishment of the hip drop has an effect on his tackling abilities. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's a situation where a hip drop helps, but I don't know. I think Trey McBride just kind of bitched him out there. Can't lie. Just made him look like a rag doll.
Yeah, but good news, he has a deleted tweet with his thoughts on that, by the way, which he said, yep, I'm 100% sure me missing that tackle at the beginning of the second quarter for a gain of 17 was the costliest miss, and that is, in fact, what lost us the game. Since deleted, but the chronically online New York Jets remain chronically online. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough look.
Very tough look. As a young up and coming superstar, got to know how to take accountability. That's just about the opposite of doing so. So very tough look.
And he's not the only one. The linebackers weren't great in this game. Quincy Williams had a huge hit and a huge sack, but it's the same thing, like the same stories over and over again. Michael Clemens still playing on an ungodly amount of snaps at edge, can't keep contain. Javon Kinlaw's jumping off sides 3 times a game. And it's these questionable offseason decisions that are biting them. But again, it's the thing that really rubs me is at the first sign of any adversity, it's like they just completely fold. And the Jets were very much alive going into this game. I mean, the Broncos lost on a last-second field goal attempt that was blocked. The Colts lost, and the Jets play the Colts this upcoming week. So if the Jets got to 4-6, they were still very much in the race in a really bad AFC wildcard race, but they come out completely flat and embarrassing. And this isn't the first time that it's happened. Going back to 2022, there are a few examples of that against Jacksonville and against Seattle Seahawks, 2 games that jump out. Last year against Miami on the road in Miami, they got blown out. And now this year, twice with their season on the line, it feels like the Pittsburgh game. And then now again, a few weeks later, in a huge moment, just coming out soft. Like that's really harsh. And like calling a team soft comes off as really harsh, but they are just a sorry football team. I don't have any other words.
I don't know what other words you can use to describe. I mean, that's absolutely true. They look like a team that's been mentally defeated for several weeks. I think that and it's confusing because they were very much alive going into this game, as you mentioned, but really looking at the schedule and the way that it's gone for them, I think that loss against New England in week 8 is just too much for this team to overcome. I think that shattered all confidence. I think that really just affected the roster and affected the morale in the locker room and pretty much caused them all to quit, because that's what I'm seeing right now. I'm seeing a team that's quitting. That's how it feels. It feels like they're not putting in that effort. It feels like they don't really want it. It feels like they're ready to just roll over and die and pack it up and maybe look ahead to next year. Or if you're Aaron Rodgers, look ahead to making your campaign into public office. I don't know, because this team does not look like they're dedicated to trying to win football games this season.
No. Tony, the GM's in here saying Jets O-line needs to be Fashanu, Mitchell, Tippmann, AVT, and Warren the rest of the year. See if Warren could be a swing tackle. Mitchell could play guard. Mitchell stinks. Warren maybe can be a swing tackle for you. Olu's going to play, I think, for a little bit. Tyron Smith got banged up in this game, and I think it's time to see Fashanu at left tackle. But John Simpson's under contract next year. He's going to play at left guard. Tippmann and AVT are going to play. You can make the case on the tackle spots for seeing what you have there. Fashanu at left tackle, sure, but I don't know if I foresee them making a move at the right tackle spot with Morgan Moses, unless there's an injury.
Yeah, I think Morgan Moses is still a good player. Maybe he's not a long-term solution, so maybe fans want to get a younger player in there, see what they have for the future. I think it's still a little too early in the season to do that. It's only week 11. It's not week 15. I think once you get to week 15 is when you start pulling veterans and you start putting in young players to take a look at next season. But right now, I think you still have to try and go out there and try and win as many games as possible and prove to be competitive, especially if you're Jeff Ulbrich and you're, basically auditioning for future coaching positions, whether as a head coach or as a DC once again. And a lot of these players who are playing on prove it contracts like Tyron Smith, who need to prove that they are still capable of playing at a high level. So I don't think that now is the time to take anybody out of the lineup and make any drastic changes for the future. I think you still have to roll with your best starting five, but Olu definitely needs to play. I think we need to see him as much as we can, and he definitely needs to be a player that you get in for the now and for the future. Those are the kind of moves that at this point in the season you should start making.
Yeah, I want to pull it up to see if they have the numbers. They do. So good sign for Olu Fashanu in relief. Came in, didn't play a ton of snaps, but 33 snaps, allowed 2 pressures against Arizona, no sacks, no penalties, 75.7 PFF grade. I know, like, not a perfect science on these grades, so I take some of these with a grain of salt, but I think he's looked so far the best at left tackle when he's come in and had to play that spot, both in the regular season and in the preseason and training camp. So really, I just want to see if he's the left tackle of the future. I think he can be, and it was a positive sign in a otherwise lost effort yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, 33 snaps is a pretty solid sample size. And, the thing with PFF grades is I think they're very much subjective. But when you take a closer look at the stats and see how many pressures were given up, what his pass blocking win rate was, as long as those numbers are positive and check out, I think those are the ones that you can really hang your hat on and say, okay, maybe we do give him more run. But I think at the end of the day, whether he's playing serviceable or above, you got to put him in the lineup just because he can make an impact now and he is your first round draft pick. So you need to get him ready to be that full-time starter in the future. So as long as the rookie isn't completely unprepared and isn't completely out of shape and, an absolute liability on the field, if they're serviceable or above, get them on the field. And that goes for Olu. That probably goes for a lot of other players across the team. Again, I still don't understand why Malachi Corley can't get on the field, why he can't be given the football at least a couple times per game. Still confuses me, especially considering the Corley or nothing, BS that they ran and around the draft, how they were so eager to make sure that they secured him in the 3rd round. If you were so eager, then you should be eager to get him on the field. But maybe Saleh had a lot to do with that, and he's not here anymore. So I don't know. I just don't understand it. I think that there's been a terrible mismanagement of rookies on this team. I get, wanting to keep these young players behind the scenes developing and growing. But to me, the best way to develop and to grow is to get live game reps, to get on the football field and be given an opportunity to make plays. And while Davante Adams was a real splash move and he's a great player, sure, absolutely. But this is kind of a lost season at this point. So start scaling back some of these veterans snap shares and start handing some of those snaps to the younger guys and giving them an opportunity to grow and develop while we get to the final stretch of the season and hope to build for 2025.
Malachi Corley, by the way, played a career high 16 snaps on offense, 28% of the offense. As expected, Xavier Gipson leads the way after the Mike Williams trade. By the way, he catches a game-winning touchdown yesterday because, of course, he does. Gipson, 24 snaps, 41%. Corley, 16 snaps, 28%. And Irv Charles, 5 snaps, 9%. It felt like a force feed Davante Adams game. And for whatever reason, Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers were not on the same page at all this game. One, it looked like there was a throw early in the game where he was expecting Adams to sit down and he kind of broke in. Adams dropped the touchdown pass. It was a tipped, yes, but it still ended up hitting him in the chest. And I believe here, let me see if they have the numbers. They got it, right? They have targets. Yeah, they do. 6 catches for 31 yards on 13 targets. He was targeted 13 times and caught less than half of them. Like, what do you say? What is there to say on that?
I don't know what there is to say. I think that it's almost like the trade for Davante Adams has done more bad than good, just because it's almost like it's inhibited Aaron Rodgers' ability to spread the ball around and see the field properly. Like he just wants to make sure that he gets the ball to Devontae Adams and force feed him. When I think the guy who should be getting force fed is absolutely Garrett Wilson. I think that
Yep.
much is clear and painfully obvious. Kid is an absolute superstar who can make the craziest catches, as we saw, who's also just reliable on a down-to-down and a reception-to-reception basis. Trying to force the Devontae Adams thing to happen just feels like Aaron Rodgers trying to make something out of nothing. And I don't know. It's like you said, when you're catching less than 50% of your targets, you got to shift the game plan in a different direction.
That's for sure. Switching gears slightly, but still sticking on the theme of this game. Jets beat reporter Zach Rosenblatt tweeted it out, but this is a microcosm of what the Jets' biggest issues were in this game. PFF had the Jets with 17 missed tackles. Tony Adams 3, Jalen Mills 3, Sherwood 2, Kinlaw 2, Iguavoen 2, Gardner 1, Isaiah Oliver 1, Quincy Williams 1, Quinton Williams 1, and TJ Reed 1. 17 missed tackles in one game is not a winning formula. As we saw, the Cardinals only punted one time in this game. It was at the end of the third quarter. They had 4 touchdowns on their first 5 possessions, and the other one was a field goal at the end of the half. They were moving the ball at will on this once very good defense that is a shell of itself. This defense looks horrible.
And what's it missing? Like, why is it now a shell? It was once good, now it's horrible. Is it because Robert Saleh is no longer here? Is that your take on it? Like, what has caused the collapse of this defense?
I do think that plays a little bit of a factor in it. I think the Saleh thing is slightly overblown because we've seen efforts from more so the team in general and the defense being a part of that, coming out flat in really big spots. But I think it's a mix of a few things. One, the change from making Ulbrich the head coach and him trying to be the head coach and defensive coordinator at the same time and not being able to do it. The second thing, I think they completely overhauled the defensive line and it got worse on paper and it has not come to fruition. Like them thinking Michael Clemens could replace John Franklin Myers adequately has been a huge mistake. Them thinking Javon Kinlaw can replace Quentin Jefferson or Leaky Fotu can replace Al Woods. Like every one of those things has been a swing and miss. And we know how long it took to get Hassan Reddick in the building here too. I think that plays a factor in it. They are banged up. They're missing CJ Mosley, who is kind of the brain of that defense. He might not have his speed and skill set anymore, but I think his presence on that field pre-snap really helps them a lot. And I think you've just seen some regression with guys like Sauce Gardner not playing up to, par there, or, the safety play getting worse this year. So I think Saleh not being here is part of it. I don't think it's the only reason. But it's a lot. There's a lot of things wrong with it.
Yeah, too much. Too many problems to count. Too much to fix and not enough time. It's very unfortunate to see. I don't know what the issue would be either. I don't think that Saleh's absence is necessarily the biggest problem that this team faces. I think Ulbrich was a good defensive coordinator before. He probably still is. I think really the regression and the lack of inspiration from this team, I think, honestly, players are just giving up. They know that the future is not bright.
It isn't bright. It definitely isn't. Johnny Boy's hanging with us. He says, "Hello, darkness, my old friend. This was the final blow. Cardinals did the old school Mortal Kombat finish him move. From the pretty much the first drive of the game, Cardinals go right down and score. The Jets drive, but can't convert in the red zone, have to settle for a field goal. And then the Cardinals go right down and score a touchdown again. That's when it felt like it was over. But I don't know. I don't got anything else on the Jets. I'm kind of just tired of it. So if you wanted to transition and get into the Giants, unless you had anything else you wanted to add on this disaster in Arizona.
Don't really have anything else to add. The only thing, not on the game at least, the only thing that I will add is I'm just going to hand the little 20-man Dynasty League IDP update because I have to every single episode. Will McDonald shipped out, traded him away. I traded Will McDonald, and this one really hurt me. I traded away Rashee Rice. But I got Jerry Jeudy in a first-round pick, so I figure I'm helping myself win now and win later, sacrificing a young pass rusher and Will McDonald, but I don't know. It was a move that needed to be made, and unfortunately, the Jets defense is only going down right now, so maybe I got rid of him at the right time.
I'm sad for the end of the Will McDonald love on this show, but maybe we'll just have to keep it going, even though he's not on the team anymore.
Yeah, it's still got Sherwood though. So, and he
Okay.
put up big points this week. So
There you go. Win. All right, let's get into those New York Giants who lost the game, but maybe won the Tank Bowl here. 20-17 loss on the road in Germany. A lot of turnovers. Tyrone Tracy fumble at the end. I'm sure we'll get into. Where do you want to start this thing?
I want to start this thing with Daniel Jones. I think that's where you have to start and probably where you end. I can't for the life of me understand how this guy played all 4 quarters and a drive in overtime, one play in overtime, really. But I just can't understand it. I mean, in the first half, what we saw was easily the worst half of football from any quarterback this season. I don't think that's necessarily a hot take. He was atrocious throughout the first half of the game. Red zone interception, missing wide open receivers on 3rd and short, missing wide open receivers on every single down, getting the ball out of his hands too quickly, not getting the ball out of his hands quickly enough. Every single play was a mistake from Daniel Jones in that first half. But the Giants go ahead, they keep with it, trot him out there in the second half. Somehow, some way, the Giants offense crawls back from the dead. Tyrone Tracy Jr. gets them into the end zone. They dial up a play for Daniel Jones to run into the end zone. All of a sudden, Daniel Jones turned it on in the second half. See, he still is a franchise quarterback, some argue. Yeah, okay, because he played 2 quarters or a quarter and a half really of decent football doesn't mean that he's worth putting out there on the field. And every single snap that he takes is another risk towards that injury clause. It's honestly unbelievable. If he does get injured and the Giants have to owe him that $23 million injury guarantee in the offseason, I mean, everybody needs to get fired. Every snap that he takes from now on is just a massive, unnecessary risk. The calculations on it will blow your minds. What would happen to the New York Giants if they have to pay that injury clause? You got to take him out of the lineup. He can't take another snap coming out of the bye week. You're 2-8. Season's over. Look ahead to the future. I get it. Dable doesn't want to lose his job. He wants to win games. You're not winning games with Daniel Jones anyway, so you might as well try somebody else. And if you're going to lose, at least lose without the risk of a $23 million injury clause.
Yeah, you said after the second interception, which was tough. I saw you tweeted out. We're like, is this the last pass that Daniel Jones is going to throw? Paraphrasing, but is this essentially it for Daniel Jones as a starter? And then they trot him right back out there again. I don't. What are you gaining out of it? Unless you want to really go, like, are we putting too much thought into this? Are they trying to tank this year and just think that Daniel Jones is going to get them a better pick by playing?
Possibly, because they can't win with him. So if you keep him out there, your odds of losing are high. But at the same time, even if you tank and you get that number 1 pick, let's say the Giants legitimately have the first overall pick and take a quarterback, but Daniel Jones tears his ACL in week 15, it's like you're not even gaining anything because you're adding that quarterback and you can't even maximize the talent around him until 2026 now because you have an extra $23 million on your salary cap. The Giants' path towards fixing this team, it's not a long one. It's a pretty quick turnaround. You cut Daniel Jones in the offseason. You free up $19 million. You already have $48 million in projected cap space. There you go. Now you're up to almost $70 million in cap space. Plus, you have Brian Burns' contract long-term that you could restructure to make more money. Same thing with Okereke. Same thing with Andrew Thomas and with Dexter Lawrence. You could possibly, if you're the New York Giants, free up over $80 million to $90 million in salary cap space this offseason if you wanted to. And $23 million of that is predicated on cutting Daniel Jones. That $23 million in cutting Daniel Jones, that signs your entire rookie draft class plus a legitimate starter on the offensive line. You don't have that money to pay him, or you don't have that money to pay those guys, and you have to pay it to Daniel Jones injured while you're cutting him anyway. That's malpractice as a general manager, and you shouldn't be allowed to spend the rest of the money that you do have. So I just don't understand why take that risk. Even if you're trying to get the top pick, even if you're tanking all the way down to the first pick, but still having to pay Daniel Jones, you're not making that first overall pick if you're Joe Schoen. You're getting fired for allowing Daniel Jones to take up all of your salary cap space anyway. So you just got to take him out of the lineup, whether it's Tommy DeVito, QB1 of Big Apple Blitz, or if it's Drew Lock. Put somebody else in there, see what the rest of this offense looks like. And you know what? Another underrated point here, You got to develop your receivers. You have to know exactly what you have in Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, Theo Johnson, Jalen Hyatt. Hyatt can't get the ball until this past game. He had 4 receptions on 4 targets, which I think is pretty important to note, for 39 yards. And they weren't all just him running straight. So tells me 2 things. One, Daniel Jones can't throw him the ball downfield, can't hit him on a deep shot, since that's why he hasn't played all throughout the season. And also, the second thing, the Giants coaching staff hasn't been using him properly because he ran a really nice dig route, got open, and made a contested catch. So maybe it's all the quarterback. I really think the quarterback is just holding this team back in every different way. Got to take him out, put in Drew Lock, screw it. Can't get any worse than this. Might as well just see what you got in these other guys.
Have they come out yet and made the Daniel Jones is still our starter statement, either after the game or today?
I didn't see anything. I saw through a Bleacher Report notification, but I didn't click on it, so I didn't get the actual quote. But I think that I saw Brian Daboll might have said they are considering all options at quarterback, which I hope and pray to God that that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's not worth risking that injury. And this is something you've been on since the start of the season, since really before the season started. This injury clause playing a really big factor into this year, and that the Giants would be forced to Russell Wilson Daniel Jones at some point. If not now, when is essentially my question. It feels like now has to be the time. I love the point you bring up about evaluating your wide receivers. It's hard to do that when, Malik Neighbors is open on 3rd down and Daniel Jones is throwing it 10 feet out of bounds. Like, there's nothing to evaluate there because your quarterback's not giving you a chance. So I think it would be Drew Lock over Tommy DeVito. I know we're the Tommy DeVito pod here, so that might be a little bit tough, but even if it is Drew Lock, I think you have to do it just for the sake of the team.
I think it's Drew Lock for some time, and then the offense is still bad, and then it eventually becomes Tommy DeVito is honestly what I think would happen. But on top of Neighbors, like you mentioned, 3rd down, he's wide open, ball flies 10 feet over his head. How about the 3rd and 1 flea flicker? Again, not a great play call from a head coach. You don't want to run that on 3rd down, but it did work. And there were 2 wide open receivers, Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson is open frequently. He's very small and he's a tough target to hit, especially downfield. However, he gets open a lot downfield. The ball just doesn't go his way. If we had a quarterback with pinpoint accuracy, or at least even just average accuracy, who could hit Wan'Dale in stride, I think this guy would be a 1,000-yard receiver because he's always open. And when he catches these passes, he's always catching them from behind him, or he has to slow down to make the catch, and then he's tackled. He's very slippery when he actually gets the ball in stride, makes a lot of people miss after the catch. If he could get the ball downfield and then make some men miss, I think he'd have a lot of explosive plays and big touchdowns like he could have on that 3rd and 1. But Daniel Jones just didn't see those guys, took a sack that he didn't need to take. No, the pocket wasn't perfect. Doesn't matter. He could have thrown that ball up there with his eyes closed, and it probably still gets caught because he had 2 wide receivers wide open. And those are the kind of plays that happen way too often. In fact, if you look at the second red zone interception that he threw, intended in the flat to Tyrone Tracy, if you watch the top of the screen, the routes, Wan'Dale Robinson breaks open for a touchdown. One-on-one man coverage, runs a deep out route, could have been a walk-in touchdown. And on the other side of the screen, you had Malik Neighbors running a deep in route, also broke wide open, probably scores a touchdown. It was a 0 blitz, man coverage, or maybe it was cover 1, something of the sort. A lot of man coverage across the board with a blitzer. Instead, he throws it to the flat on the one-on-one running back who's covered by a linebacker. That is the absolute last read that you should make there. That is the worst possible throw when you've got all these wide receivers in trips formation and they're heading up against a one-on-one man coverage. Throw the ball to your wideouts. Trust them. And that's what I'm saying. You can't evaluate your wide receiver talent when your quarterback can't throw them an accurate ball on time and against the right coverage look. So you're gaining nothing by having Daniel Jones out there other than losses. And just to clarify, I found that Bleacher Report notification, and the quote came from Jordan Raanan of ESPN. This is what Brian Daboll said when asked about the quarterback position on Sunday. I'd say we got a lot of work to do here in the next few days, in the next week, and we'll evaluate where we're at and what we need to do. To me, that sounds like over the bye week, they will transition Daniel Jones out of the starting lineup and put somebody else in, and praise the freaking Lord. Hallelujah.
Yeah, it's about damn time. Now, you do have Fat Nerds Train saying Cam Ward needs to be a Giant. And I know that you've been on that for a little bit. And now with the result of yesterday, Giants kind of putting themselves in a better position to make that dream a reality here.
Yeah, Giants currently hold a number 2 pick in the draft. For a little bit there, they held the number 1 overall pick. The Giants haven't picked number 1 in like 60 or 70 years or something ridiculous. But they picked number 2 in 2018. They squandered that opportunity by taking a running back. A good one, but still missed opportunity to trade down and get a haul. But right now, if this is how the draft board were to go, the only risk that you would have is if Jacksonville traded down and somebody leapfrogged you for your quarterback. But when you're only 1 pick behind, send them a 3rd-round pick or whatever it is and move up to 1 spot. Pick 1st overall and take the quarterback of your dreams. That has to be the MO here when you're picking in the top 3. The Giants can't walk out of this draft without a quarterback. And I don't care who they sign in free agency. Even if they go out there and they pay Sam Darnold, which I don't think is a great idea for this team, or if they trade for Matt Stafford, which is like the ridiculous thing that Giants fans beg for that will never happen. I don't care what happens. Giants need to take a quarterback anyway. Even if they sign a veteran, get a rookie who you could sit, grow, develop, and eventually take over and hopefully be your franchise quarterback. You don't want to be picking in the top 3 that often. You're picking there way too often, but let's hope that this is the one final last time that you are. Take the quarterback now that you have the opportunity and build towards a brighter future.
What do you make of Tony's comment saying that this is a horrible quarterback draft?
I don't agree or disagree. Again, I always say we have to wait until March to really make that determination. Like, we got to get through the college football playoffs. We got to get through the combine, the bowl games, like all that crap really feeds into your analysis of a college quarterback. So I don't agree that it's a horrible quarterback draft just because we don't know exactly what it is just yet. But we can find the middle ground here and agree that this quarterback class in comparison to last year's class is not all that great. Last year's class, though, I think is going to go down as a historically good one. I think that's an anomaly in its own right. I don't think that this is an anomaly in a historically bad quarterback draft class. I think this is about average to slightly below, but listen, we've seen bad quarterback classes have one guy come out and be spectacular. The 2017 quarterback class, that was considered a bad quarterback class. Had Trubisky, had Deshaun Watson, but hey, also had Patrick Mahomes. So when that happens, you never know when that happens, really. So even if the 3 of the quarterbacks in the first round of this year's class are a bust, you just got to hope as the New York Giants, you're the one that drafts the absolute winner and franchise quarterback.
I was going to say in 2017 and 2018, the Jets elected not to take a quarterback in a poor quarterback class in 2017, waited for the historic 2018 class when we know how the 2018 class ended. Josh Rosen out of the league. Sam Darnold didn't work out for the Jets. Baker didn't work out for the Browns, now working out in Tampa Bay. And you have Lamar and Josh Allen, who was the 3rd and 5th quarterback taken in that draft, being the big ones that work out. I don't know. Sometimes don't overthink it. It's tough.
And I think a second lesson that you can learn from that 2018 class is from the Arizona Cardinals. They drafted Josh Rosen with the 10th or 7th overall pick, whatever. They drafted him in the top 10. After a year, they realized this is a mistake. Boom, let's reboot. Take another quarterback next year. Kyler Murray is a franchise quarterback. He's spectacular. Just beat up on the Jets yesterday. So even if you're in the top 3 in a bad quarterback class, take the quarterback. See if you hit. If you miss, I always say this: hire slowly, fire quickly. So if you know that you have a mistake after 1 year, do it again. Throw another dart at the board. Hope to hit a bullseye the second time around. That's how you got to get it done. But when you're there in the top 3 and you have the opportunity to take the quarterback, don't squander it. Take the damn quarterback. But again, I mean, listen, Tony the GM does make a good point. Like, quarterback 1 in this class, Cam Ward, if we were comparing that to last year's class, quarterback 6, maybe quarterback 7. So I don't know. But again, I think last year's class is an anomaly in how historically good it might have been. But I just think when you're there in the top 3 to 5 picks, you just got to take the quarterback anyway.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of passing on a quarterback just because of the fear that it might not work out. I think you have to take that swing regardless. So for the Giants, I think it's either Cam Ward or what's your thoughts on Shedeur Sanders? I feel like he's a polarizing one.
I'm not in love with him. I don't hate him. I know a lot of people are on those extremes of the spectrum. I'm in the middle right now. I'm waiting to continue to see how he plays throughout the season. If Colorado goes to the CFP rather, what he does at the combine, how he answers those interview questions. I think all of that plays into Shedeur Sanders' draft stock. And ultimately, my one constant take with him is going to be this: there's nothing that he does better than Cam Ward. So I'm never going to have him as QB1 in this class. I can almost guarantee that. I think Cam Ward does everything better than him. I think Cam Ward is more mobile. I think Cam Ward is more poised in the pocket. I think Cam Ward has a stronger arm. All of those things. Everything that Cam Ward does is better than Shedeur Sanders, even if it's just slightly. Shedeur Sanders obviously has the potential with the Hall of Fame bloodline from Deion Sanders. Sure, all of that's true. And I don't think that he's a bad quarterback, but I can almost guarantee by the time we get to the draft, he's not going to be the quarterback one consensus.
I am having a really hard time with Shedeur personally, because I think he has some traits that make him appealing at the next level. I'm worried about him going to a market like New York for either the Jets or the Giants with some of like the package deal, so to speak, with Deion. Not that Deion necessarily would have to go and coach the team, but he's at Colorado making a lot of noise at Colorado. Like, I don't know. I don't see that ending well in a big market.
I don't either. And I think we've seen countless examples of this for the New York Giants, where they get a young, exciting player in their building, and he's an outspoken player, and the media loves to just pick him apart and try and run him out of town. I mean, we had a conversation about that last week with Malik Neighbors. He said something about, well, I am open, and then all of a sudden, all these players or all these reporters are trying to get him out of the building. So it's just kind of tough when Shedeur Sanders is very outspoken. I want a quarterback with some personality. I mean, I've begged for that. I've said that so many times on this show and every other show that I do. Like, I want a quarterback who has something to believe in and has some charisma, but sometimes being too outspoken can also be an issue. So, it's kind of difficult to project how Shedeur Sanders would survive in the New York media market.
Johnny Boy has a question for you. Would Dable come to the Jets as the offensive coordinator and Brian Flores as the head coach? Could you see something like that happening?
I think Brian Dable is a coach that, if he does get fired, has a really good chance of landing a head coaching job somewhere else. I think that, the guy was head coach of the year in 2022. I think that holds a pretty good amount of weight. Doesn't always mean that he's immediately going to jump into another head coaching job. But this looks like an offseason. Let me pull up Tankathon and just take a look at some of these teams. This looks like an offseason where we could see a lot of head coach openings. Like, obviously, if the Giants fire Dable, I think he'll have the Jacksonville Jaguars as an option. I think Kevin Stefanski's probably safe. Whatever they have going on in Tennessee, that's up in the air. Las Vegas is definitely up in the air. I think Antonio Pierce is on the hot seat. McDaniel's probably safe. I think Gerard Mayo could be a shocking one. Like, we could end up seeing him get fired. The Jets are already open. I think Dable could end up being not OC here, but HC here. New Orleans is already open. I think Carolina could open up. I think Dable in Dallas makes a lot of sense. Indianapolis could open. Even Cincinnati could open. We have a lot of places that could open.
Chicago.
Yeah, and Chicago, I think, definitely will open, I think, within the next 3 weeks. So when you're looking at it, somebody's going to like Brian Dable, in my opinion. And I think he is going to wind up getting a head coaching job if he gets fired this offseason.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by that. I don't hate the Brian Flores option for the Jets. I'm just really worried about going the defensive route again. And maybe that sounds hypocritical because a name that I brought up a few times is Mike Vrabel. But I see Vrabel more as like the overseer or like CEO style of head coach than more like a coordinator, where I don't see that as much with Flores. And maybe that's just an own personal bias, but I don't know. Do you have any take on Flores getting another crack at being a head coach?
I can tell you that it won't happen with the Giants. That much I know for sure after the legal dispute. But I think Flores is one of the brightest minds in the NFL and absolutely deserving of a head coaching job. He'll probably land it somewhere. But I do agree with you. There is an element of questions regarding, should the Jets go defensive again? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it's at the end of the day, it just sucks that we're talking about potential head coaching possibilities. I think Dable as head coach for the Jets makes a lot of sense, though. Like, this comment I appreciate, and I think it's interesting. Yeah. I think that going the offensive route makes sense for the Jets, and Dable is going to be one of the 3 brightest offensive minds available in the offseason as a head coach candidate if he does get fired by the Giants. But all of these different openings that we mentioned could potentially, open up. that leads me to believe that Dable won't get fired because there's going to be too much competition for the top head coaching candidates, and the Giants probably aren't going to win the race for those top candidates, considering the absolute mess of an organization they've been for the last decade. So I think it's better to just stick with the enemy you know rather than the enemy that you don't know in this regard. The grass isn't always greener. Dable's got 2 years left on his contract. At least let him play that fourth season out.
Ian sends in a super chat. Let's go to him. He says, for the Giants head coach, I saw this, though. Dable is a head coach, not just the coordinator. Need both for him, and he isn't a head coach yet.
I think Dable is a tough evaluation just because of the quarterback. And I think with the offensive coordinator thing, it's also tough to evaluate Dable because he clearly missed on his coordinator hirings with keeping Thomas McGahee. Mike Kafka seems like maybe he was a miss. Wink Martindale was definitely a miss. Shane Bowen may be a miss, maybe not. I don't know. It's really tough to tell with the talent on this roster. But I do think that his ability to rally the troops and win games that they're not supposed to was demonstrated last year. And I think that because of that, the way that he held that locker room together and found ways to win without his down to his third string quarterback proves that he is more than a coordinator and he is a head coach. And I think that the 2022 season, he was a good head coach. He wasn't perfect, but he also was a rookie. And I really just think that there's a level of frustration building on both sides of the ball regarding the quarterback. And that's why I say once this quarterback is taken out of the lineup, I think a spark is going to be lit. And I think things are going to look a lot different for this team.
My only really big concern I have with Dable, I just want to toss this one up to put the clarification up there. I'm saying that he's a coordinator. He hasn't been a good head coach yet. I don't love how he is on the sidelines. He's almost a little bit too animated, I think, at times, and wears his frustrations on his sleeve. And I just feel like that can run its course quickly if things start going poorly, like it did last year for the Giants. But with what he did as a rookie head coach in 2022, I think there's some positives to get from him. I just feel like he's a mixed bag. I don't think we know for certain if he is a good head coach or not yet.
Yeah, I don't think we know for certain. And I feel you on the animation, but at the same time, I feel like he's really improved in that regard this season. Like last year, I mean, I was criticizing him constantly because I was like, dude, you're throwing tablets like down in front of your players. You're screaming at referees every 2 seconds. You've got to settle down. He vowed to in the offseason. I feel like he has mostly settled down. We haven't seen him throw things and scream as much. Definitely not as the players. Now, I don't know what it's like behind the scenes. Perhaps he's still an absolute menace behind the scenes. It's totally possible. But on the sidelines, he has been a little bit less animated, and I think he's cooled out a little bit. And I think that is important. So that's going to be something that we need to continue to evaluate, though, throughout the rest of the season. But we are in the bye week. If a change is going to happen, I think it's going to happen this week. I don't think the Giants are going to fire Dable, but I definitely don't think they're going to fire him between weeks 11 and 17. If they're going to fire him, it's probably going to be something that we discuss on Thursday's episode. So, but again, I don't think it's going to happen. I think you have to get to the end of the season, see what options are available for you if you are going to make a change or not. But listen, we don't know whether or not he's a good head coach just yet, but I don't think we're going to properly be able to evaluate that until he has his pick of the quarterback and a young talent to develop. So once we see that pairing next season, then we'll know. And if it all blows up, if they still suck, he sucks, and the quarterback sucks, 2026, you take another quarterback with a new head coach, and you just try and reboot again.
I think that might be the best way for the Giants to approach this. I really do. I think that would probably be the route that I would go. And like you said, if it doesn't work, then you go the Cardinals route, where they fire the head coach after 1 year. They move on from the quarterback, and new head coach, new quarterback, and away we go. I feel like we spent a lot of time talking about the future for both these teams on this episode, but after the performance we saw from both these guys yesterday, I think that was the move.
I agree. And listen, there just wasn't a lot of positivity to highlight. I mean, the defense is getting a lot of shit for the way that they played. They still held the Panthers to 17 points or 20 points, really. And like they should have. The defense did more than enough to win against a bad Panthers team. Yeah, they let up a bunch of yards rushing, The pass defense and coverage was really good. Tyrone Tracy on the offensive side of the ball was excellent. The fumble at the end absolutely sucks, but I think it was a blessing in disguise. This game to me felt like the Patriots one from last season, where the Giants ended up winning on a late field goal and screwing themselves out of draft positioning, letting the Patriots get ahead of them in the draft order and take Drake May from them. This time around, I think they're on the right side of history. They lost this game. I don't root for losses necessarily. I don't want the team to tank ever. I think it's bad for the integrity of the sport, and it's just wrong to do to the players who dedicate their lives to this and to winning games. But at the end of the day, you have to recognize the reality. A loss is a win for the Giants in this case, and this is kind of like righting the wrong of that Patriots game last year.
There we go. So I think that's going to do it for us on this episode. Hopefully Thursday's episode's a little bit of a better vibe. I'm not sure it will be, but we could always hope for that. I appreciate everyone tuning in with us. Make sure to subscribe before you head out of here. Check out Anthony's work on Fireside Giants. Me, you can find me at Matt O'Leary NY. That'll do it. We'll catch you next time.